Okay, so we'll just start with a little bit of a grounding. Just noticing the seat beneath you, maybe the floor or the chair that's supporting you, supporting the weight of your body. And trust that you can really allow yourself to be held by this support. You can really let yourself be heavy because the more you allow yourself to be held, the more the floor rises up to support you. And you can choose if you want to have your eyes closed or soften your gaze. Sometimes I really like to just notice the quality of light in the room. Just let my eyes drift around the colors, the shapes, the textures that I see in the space around me. Noticing what is the nearest sound that you can hear, and what is the farthest sound that you can hear right now. Allowing your breath to breathe you, allowing your body to move as you breathe, and opening up an invitation to any supportive figures, guides, ancestors, companions, anyone who is benevolent and supportive who would like to be with us today. Allowing those figures to come into this space now and acknowledging the presence of many other figures who come in support of anyone watching this recording. And letting your supportive companions land in the space with you, noticing where they land in the space with you. Where you find them in relationship to your body. And offer them a greeting of your own. Saying hello. Seeing if there's anything else they would like to say before settling in. Just taking a moment to check in. Mm. Mm. And when you feel like your supportive figures are settled in and your body is settled in, you can slowly take your time to find yourself back oriented to the screen, or actually even just listening to my voice. You don't even need to be watching me. And see what it's like to maintain your connection with your supportive figures as I share a story today. And today I wanted to share a story about how this thing called the Scorpion's Nest uh, came to be, how I came to the idea for this program. And I think I'll just jump right in to the story. So it began with my dream tending studies. I studied dream tending under Stephen Eisenstadt, and I did their 3 certificate programs. But I think I was maybe not exactly halfway through the 3 certificates, somewhere in the middle, maybe in the beginning of the, or maybe it was even only the second module of the first certificate. So it was really closer to the beginning. And the focus for that module was nightmares. We were really diving into how do you work with nightmares? And so each time we would have a module, Stephen would work with a dreamer, and we would all get to witness and see how he worked, but also receive the dreamer's dream for the group as well. And that would happen like maybe 3 or 4 times each module. There would be 3 or 4 dreamers that Stephen was working with. And in this second module on nightmares, I was one of the dreamers. I was selected as one of the dreamers. And so we were working with a nightmare of mine. And at first I was really intimidated to share my dream out loud for everyone else to experience, because it had some it was scary. It had some sexual kind of assault themes pretty blatantly. That was kind of the main focus of the dream, really. And I felt concerned for not wanting to trigger other people in the class. And I think also that the image itself was just so scary for me that I was scared overall. But Stephen did a really good job of creating a safety for the whole class, and for me to be assured that, yeah, we feel sturdy within ourselves to be able to witness this dream right now. And so I shared the dream, and to shorten the story a bit, what kind of came out of that tending, Stephen's tending of my dream, was that he eventually had me standing up on my feet, saying no to this kind of bad guy figure in the dream who was, sexually assaulting someone. And I was up on my feet, and I was practicing the physical act of saying no. And everyone else in the class actually was doing the same for a few rounds. And before I was able to get to that point of facing the perpetrator kind of and saying no and holding a boundary and a distance, we first had to do some work to get me in connection with supportive figures who could stand alongside me imaginally, and support me also in standing up and saying no. And I don't think I fully realized at the time that I did struggle to say no in life. That was one of the things that I would then be working on. So then, kind of fast forwarding a bit, that was probably in January of some year. I don't remember, all of the years are blurring together. But then that fall, I was dating someone, kind of pretty casually. And I was having these kind of intuitive feelings. For one thing, I had a birth control implant in my arm, the Nexplanon implant thing. And it was the second cycle that I had had it. Like, I had had it for 3 years, and then I got a new one, and I was on that second cycle of having it. And it would like get really itchy in my arm, and kind of swollen and red sometimes. And I felt like, oh, that can't be good. And sometimes I would be spotting weirdly or bleeding strangely. And with the Nexplanon, it was like, it was supposed to kind of take away your bleed, but lots of people had different experiences with it. But I was kind of starting to feel like, oh, there's something wrong here. And maybe I should see a gynecologist. And then the person that I was sort of dating at the time let me know that he had HPV, and so then I kind of was even more moved to go to the gynecologist and just make sure everything was good. And I went and I had switched my health insurances. So I was seeing a new doctor. And it wasn't like I was really due for anything because they only change out the Nexplanon every 3 years or something. So I saw this new doctor and she was like, oh, well, we wouldn't normally see you right now. You're not really due for anything, but just since you're a new patient, we can check everything out. And I was like, great, that's what I wanted to do. And then at the end of the appointment, we were leaving. She's like, do you have any questions? And I said, yeah, I'm kind of curious about HPV. Someone I was just with kind of let me know. And we talked about it a little bit, and she was kind of like, well, there's nothing you probably don't have to worry. You don't really have to worry about it. And then I went home, and then, results came back or whatever. And I found out that I had HPV. And not only did I have HPV, but I had something called cervical dysplasia, which is something that happens to the cells on your cervix and is what can kind of progress into cervical cancer in women. And I kind of feel like it wasn't just that one person that I could have, that I like, I don't blame that one person as, oh, like that's the person who gave me HPV or whatever. I think it probably could have happened a long time before that because my cervical dysplasia was already so advanced. So the diagnosis I had was CIN3, and there's 3 levels of it. It's CIN1, CIN2, CIN3. And that's really kind of the last stage before it becomes precancerous or, starts to so it was pretty a serious diagnosis. And the doctors, of course, their solution to that is a procedure, a surgical procedure to basically cut off a layer like on the face of the cervix. Like they kind of take this hot electrical loop and just scrape off the face of the cervix to scrape off those cells. And pretty much as soon as I heard a description of the procedure, there was something inside of me that was just so adamantly no. And it did remind me actually of the felt sensation I had when I had been practicing no in that dream tending with Stephen. And luckily I had a friend who knew of someone who was running holistic cervical wellness, cervical healing programs. And I found that person on Instagram. Her name is Danelle Randall. And she was talking about her own story of clearing abnormal PAPs and clearing cervical dysplasia and HPV, and that it's totally possible actually to do without surgery if you don't want surgery. And so I enrolled in one of her courses, and that was really the beginning of this maybe 9-month journey of cervical healing that I intensively went through. I would say it's not that it's over now, but it was really intensive for me for 9 months. And there were a lot of things in my life that I changed. I completely changed my diet. I started taking all kinds of supplements. I started doing all kinds of acupuncture and Reiki and yoni steaming and grounding and all kinds of things on a regular basis that weren't part of my regular health regimen before. And I don't know that I even had a regular health regimen before. That was one of the gifts, was in developing a routine for the first time maybe in my life. And this is a really big part of the Scorpion's Nest story, because that time, so just to get to the punchline of it, I guess, or not punchline, but I did end up clearing my SIN3 and HPV. So I did not end up getting the surgery after 9 months of a lot of work, and a lot of healing. And there is so much to unpack in that time. Like it was scary, but it was also so very rich and completely changed the trajectory of my life. And the biggest things I take away from that time were, one, it was really helping me to become more comfortable with my softness. And this is kind of the inspiration of really what I'm talking about when I talk about dark, wild softness in the Scorpion's Nest, and how to foster that and nourish it and protect it. Because so much of the work I did in Danelle's course was about coming into relationship with my cervix, actually. And, she would even encourage us to spend time touching our cervix, not in a sexual way, just to become familiar with ourselves. She really framed the cervix as an oracle, as this seat of power, and this portal, right? That is the cervix is what the baby moves through when being birthed. And I was so afraid of my insides, of even just touching the insides of like my vagina. When I was growing up, I never was able to use tampons. I couldn't really successfully use tampons until I was in college. Because every time I would try, it would just be so scary and so painful. And I was mostly scared of what I didn't know. It was like touching the inside of myself was like touching the unknown, because you can't see it. You can't see what's going on in there. And it was the softness that really scared me. Like, if you think about the soft tissue inside your cheeks, right? It's a similar kind of tissue. And with mouths, it's less scary because we can open our mouths and see inside and see. But if you are just blindly, feeling that soft tissue that feels like the inside of your cheek, the softness for me, it was like, oh my God, this is so soft. It's like vulnerable. Like, I was so afraid of cutting myself with a fingernail. I was like, it feels so soft. It feels so easy to cut. And I was so afraid of hurting myself because of the softness. And I remember sharing that with a friend as I was moving through the process of like, oh my God, like, this is my biggest fear, actually. This prompt of trying to touch my cervix is terrifying. It's the one thing I might not do at all in this program. And I was telling my friend about, like, it's just so soft and I'm so afraid of cutting myself, or like hurting myself somehow, because seems like it would be so easy to do that. And my friend was like, yeah, but think about, like, actually, my friend was the person who made me think about the inside of my mouth. Think about how regenerative those cells are. Like, the skin cells on the inside of your cheek are some of the fastest to heal and regenerate of anywhere in the body, because they are so like soft and fresh and new, And I was like, oh, wow. And anyway, just the whole process of beginning to, oh, see, what is it like to feel not even with touching, but just from internal, sense. What is it like to feel my cervix? What is it like to listen to my cervix as a guide, listening to my cervix as an oracle, listening to my cervix to feel my yes and to feel my no? Was a deeply embodied process. And there was a softening that had to happen for me on that level. And also a softening on the level of like how I was oriented to the world after that, because there were times in my life when I was certainly like kind of flinging myself around sexually. And there can be lots of reasons for that to be kind of a mechanism that I was coping with. But having that diagnosis and changing this orientation to my own body completely changed my way of relating, not only with potential lovers, but also with my friends and my family and the people around me who were supporting me through that journey. So that was a big chunk. And that's a big piece of the inspiration of the Scorpion's Nest, because from that time, I really had to practice saying no. It was like, oh, this is a good thing that through dream tending, I had an initial practice of this is what no feels like. Because now, 6 months later, 8 months later, or whatever, now I really have to practice it a lot more consciously and more frequently than I ever have in my life. And I was also really listening to my cervix as the guide for that, and having to be really like, I think for me, as someone who struggled to say no, that was a key piece to unravel, because it was a key piece of what got me into kind of the situation of having that diagnosis in the first place, was my inability to say no. Because previously it had been very easy for me to override any signals from my body that I did not want something, or that it was not right timing for something. And so I needed to develop that very intimate relationship with myself, with my body, through my cervix. I had to develop a kind of reverence for my body through relationship with my cervix. That meant now I recognize how precious this is. Now I recognize that this softness is precious and part of my life force, and needs to be honored and listened to and protected. And so once I had reoriented that relationship, it's not that I didn't even realize that and I wouldn't say that my relationship with my body was necessarily disrespectful before. Maybe in moments, you know, but previously I had thought that I was someone who had a very embodied kind of experience. But this diagnosis really showed me that, oh, I actually haven't been respectful to my body. And I certainly have not been reverent to my body in practice, maybe just in thought, but not in practice. And so when something would come up then that was like a no for me, it was like, oh, this is something I have to say no to. It became easier over time with practice to not default to the, oh, let me put myself aside and prioritize what this other person wants first, because that had been the pattern. But it became easier to instead say, I'm feeling a no, and it is very important that I honor this no, and I have to cultivate the courage within myself to put myself first, to put my softness first before anyone else's desires. I have to be the one who holds the courage to say no, even when it's scary, because I know that that no is what will be in reverence to my body and my cervix and my life force. So really the themes that I talk about in the Scorpion's Nest of cultivating the courage to protect and nourish and tend to our dark, wild softness, for me, is coming pretty specifically out of that experience. Like that is, in my mind, the best example of what I mean when I'm saying those things. Courage to be a steward of our own dark, wild softness. And anyway, so after kind of going through that healing process, and the healing journey continues still, it's not over, because I still want to maintain that relationship with my body and my cervix. And it has certainly waned because I was doing it very intensively, almost too intensively at a certain point. But I kind of got to the point where, okay, I have a clear pap smear. I have a normal pap smear now. And that felt like sort of a finishing line, even though it's not really. But after that point, it was a lot of pressure off of myself that I had been putting on myself, maybe. And now, how many months have gone by? It's been a while, at least 9 months, probably a year, I would say, since, I kind of cleared that. But I had felt at the time like, oh, how do I share this experience? There's something about this experience that is wanting to be expressed and shared with other people. And I thought about maybe I will make a dance performance about it, but that never really gained momentum. I thought maybe I'll just start talking about it more on my social media. But to be honest, that has been scary still. And so I kind of let it go. I was like, it feels like there's a desire for expression here, but I don't know what it is yet. And then I think recently, as I started growing my business, building my business with Dreamwork, what I really wanted to create was sometimes I would have clients who would come to me for a dream session. And it's always amazing every time. Like every dream session is so special. But most people will just do one session. And I just had this feeling of like, there is so much more. I'm not wanting to just analyze or interpret or find meaning in one dream for a person. I really want to help people in developing a practice of dream work that can be continual, because the more you practice it, I think the more it can feed your life. And so I was thinking about what would a program look like that was maybe over multiple weeks so that people could have time to, really, really develop a dreaming practice. And not only a program that would be over multiple weeks, but also like a group program, because I believe that not all of the dreams that come to us are meant for us alone. I think that oftentimes we receive dreams that are meant for the collective or meant for others to experience too, meant to be shared, because dreams are often very much like stories. And there's a lot of healing that comes when we share our stories with each other, right? We find often very universal themes in storytelling. And I think dreams can be the same way. And that dream medicine that comes for one person can also be dream medicine for multiple people. And I think that witnessing other people's dreams can do a lot to grow your own personal dreaming practice. And you can learn from other people about how they are creating their dreaming practice. And that can, spark a lot of inspiration. So I was thinking about those things, like, how do I create something that's going to be really supporting people to like have a robust practice of their own? That's really what I want to grow. And I felt like, if I do a group thing, I think that there should be a theme of focus for a program like that. What could my theme of focus be if I were to do something like that? And I thought about how much my own personal dream work had been supporting me in developing my courage. I think that at different times in our lives, each of us are called through different transformations, and our dreams are always supporting us in those transformations. And for me in particular, at this time in my life, my transformation has been about developing courage, and my dream figures have really shown up in support of my courage. And then I thought of my cervical healing journey and how that was a real, a deep kind of courage, a particular kind of courage. Oh, this is something I forgot to mention actually, because, as I was in the cervical healing, I went to a friend who did like a medical astrology birth chart reading for me. And at least or in tropical astrology, I know my North Node is in Scorpio. Oh, it's a good thing that Diana is on this call today, because Diana is my sidereal astrology expert. I feel like I have a memory of Diana telling me that my sidereal North Node is Sirius, the 13th sign in sidereal astrology. I'm not sure, but anyway, I had looked at my kind of like a medical astrology frame with a friend who pointed out to me that my North Node was in Scorpio in the 6th house. And so she pointed that out because she was like, oh, there's something about this time, like this underworld journey that you're on with your cervical healing. Like Scorpio is very much the pelvic and the reproductive organ region. And yeah, there's something about you in this life that is meant to move towards these kinds of like deep excavations. And so I became curious about that. So then, when I'm contemplating this group program over multiple weeks and over the theme of courage, and a specific kind of courage that is in reverent honor of our softness, I thought, oh, I'm curious again about this North Node in Scorpio. And let me just look up the myth of Scorpio. And so I Googled myth of Scorpio. And I know that a lot of people associate Pluto with Scorpio. And so then there's, of course, stories of the underworld and Hades and Persephone and those stories. But the myth that I found was one I had not heard before, the myth of Scorpius. And in that story, Artemis was the huntress, the goddess of hunting, but also the goddess of midwifery. And she was maybe friends with Orion, who was this giant hunter man. And there are different versions of the story. Maybe Orion and Artemis were in love. Maybe Orion wanted Artemis, but the feeling was not reciprocated. Different versions of the story, but basically, Orion, for whatever reason, kind of claims or boasts or threatens that he could kill all of the beasts in the world. He could slay all of the beasts on Earth. And so then in different versions of the story, it is Artemis or Gaia, Earth, who then, hearing Orion brag, threaten that he could slay all of the beasts in the land, they then send Scorpius to defeat Orion. So Scorpius comes and battles with Orion. I think they both get slayed in the process, but anyway, Scorpius is able to defeat Orion. And then Zeus sends them both up into the sky to be constellations on opposite ends. And so that's why whenever you see Orion in the sky, you don't see Scorpio at the same time. And at first I was like, that's an interesting story. That is not what I imagined when I was imagining Scorpio as an archetype. I imagined Scorpio as like the deep waters, and like I was like, having a hard time relating that to Scorpio at first. And then this is sort of a strange detail of the story. But then, we may all remember that there was the shooting that happened at a Trump rally. And the night before that shooting happened, I actually had a dream that felt sort of like a premonition kind of dream. Because in this dream, I was at an event where Trump was the designated guest speaker. And he came out on the stage, and at the front of the stage, towards the front of the stage, like in the audience area, there was like this group of women all together that I could see. And one of them was someone I know, a friend of mine. And all of these women are kind of towards the front of the stage. And as soon as Trump came out, he immediately went for this group of women. He didn't even bother addressing the rest of the audience. He kind of just went right over to them and started talking to them. And my friend who was in the group, who I know in waking life, kind of put her body in between Trump and these other women and kind of tried to like push him away from them. And was kind of like protecting the rest of the group of women. And that was the dream I had. And so then that next day was the shooting at a Trump rally. And it just made me think about this time that we are living in, and how important it is for all of us to be finding the ways in which we are going to protect what is soft, and how are we going to cultivate the courage to hold that line, to say stand back or no to a perpetrator. Yeah. And so I think that those are all of the pieces of the story. Is there anything else that I want to say? But that was sort of where it all clicked together for me, because then the myth of Scorpio made sense. I was like, oh, I see this happening. This like big man who has maybe grown too arrogant, who is claiming to slay all of the beasts of the land, right? And Scorpius is the one who comes in protection of all of the beasts of the earth. Scorpius is the one who comes in protection of the soft and the wild and the dark things of the earth. And so that's what the Scorpion's Nest is for me. It is a personal and collective practice of reverence and protection and nurturing of the dark, wild, soft, and the courage that it really takes to hold that space for the dark, wild, soft. And I believe that that's just sort of the intention or prayer theme that I'm setting. And I believe that whoever shows up for this program, I believe in the dreams that are coming with them or through them. I believe in the dreams that are coming to support their courage. So that doesn't, it's like, I don't know that every person who may feel called to the scorpion's nest is necessarily going through a cervical healing journey of their own. That could be the case. It could be something else. But I trust that whatever it is, the dreams are coming in support of the courage that it takes to nurture softness. Yeah, I think that's the whole story. And to just share a little bit, maybe logistically, about the program more, it is running during Scorpio season, um, or like a little bit Libra and Scorpio season. And I guess one more thing I want to say about is it does feel like a particular Scorpio kind of courage, right? It's different maybe from the Aries kind of courage or the Leo kind of courage. But I don't know, who's to say actually, right? Again, I don't know what this courage will look like for you. So the program is running for 8 weeks. September 29th to like November 21st or 22nd, I believe. And it's structured in a way where we will meet twice a week. It's limited to 8 participants maximum. And so each week we will have one-on-one dream work for the rest of the group to witness. And then we will have a second meeting each week where we're drawing from the dream work we did, the one-on-one dream work. We're drawing the prompts that we receive in that one-on-one dream work, and we're taking those prompts in the second meeting and saying, okay, how can we work with these? How can we make time for exploring these prompts? And what does that look like? And how can we integrate these prompts into a waking life practice? Because whenever I tend to dream, a big kind of goal is to get to a point where we find a prompt that the dream is offering that is usually also a way of honoring the dream. So we take the time one-on-one with witness of the group to listen to the dream, listen for the dream's desire and what it is prompting us into. And then we meet again later in the week and we take the time to do the practice to honor the dream together. And that's kind of, those meetings are a little bit more group involved, group engagement, rather than just witnessing. And then at the same time, there is a Telegram group chat. I think Telegram will be the platform, but there will be a group chat where you can be sharing with each other, like, oh, this is something that has happened since the dream, or this is something that has happened when I was trying out the practice that the dream prompted me into. Or if you just want to share more dreams that you're having and get kind of my feedback and questions that I would have you ask about more dreams. So it's sort of like my dream correspondence as well, but in a group chat setting. And then we're also going to have bonus sessions from my friend Tracy. Tracy Broyles, she's going to start us off with a bonus session, an embodiment session specifically focused around the pelvis. And we'll start with that pelvic embodiment work because that is what we'll also carry for the duration of the program. Maintaining that relationship with our bodies, maintaining that relationship with our pelvic region in particular, maybe maintaining that relationship with our cervix, right? Depending on the person. And then she will also close us out, I think, with or maybe it might come in the middle of the program, I'm not sure, but there will be a second bonus session. Tracy also does energy work. So that's going to be fun, a couple extra bonus sessions to move us through. And And right now there's an early bird price on the program. The early bird price runs out on September 13th or stops on September 13th. And it is $648 right now for the program. After September 13th, it will be $864. And there is a 3-month payment plan available for both early bird price and after early bird price. And I'm contemplating making a 4-month payment plan option as well right now. I think I will probably do that. But with the 3-month payment plan right now on the early bird price, I believe it is $216 per month for 3 months. Yeah, and it's all online. And I also feel flexible about working with the people who want to join, schedule wise, if people are coming from different time zones. I would like to find a schedule that works best for everyone involved. Yeah. And I think, also throughout, I'll be emailing everybody prompts to explore and additional instructions for things and yeah, all kinds of things. I'm really taking for this program the inspiration of Artemis as an archetype. Artemis, the huntress, the goddess of hunting and midwifery. She is the goddess of the dark, the night, the moon realm. We could think of it in one way as this program being a reverent, honoring, protecting, nurturing of yin energy. And I want to explore how can we work with Artemis as an archetype, or whatever symbol represents that kind of archetype for you. Maybe there is a different goddess of the hunt that you want to be in relationship with during these 8 weeks. For me, my way of relating with Artemis is through spearfishing. That's my only experience of what hunting must be like. And I will say, I think this may be a story for another time, but I've had a dream recently about spearfishing that really made me realize what a yin kind of practice it can be, what a reverent experience it is to take a life. So yeah, I'm thinking about all kinds of things, all of those things. But I think that is really what I wanted to share, is just the heart and soul, the spirit really of this offering, I feel like, that came to me and through me to now offer for anyone who feels called. And that's the story. And giving thanks for all of the dream figures and companions that have been supporting me and are here today in support, and giving gratitude to all of your dream figures who showed up today. And for anyone who is listening or watching this recording, your dream figures, thank you too. And if you are interested in learning more about the Scorpion's Nest or want to talk to me more about the program, we could talk about, why you feel called, what you feel interested in, what you might be seeking to get out of the program inside the Scorpion's Nest. Get in touch with me. I can share all of my things. bit.ly/Scorpion's Nest is the website for the program. You can also email me. I have a new email now, wandersensdream@gmail.com. So that's WANDERSENSEDREAM@gmail.com. wandersensdream@gmail.com. Get in touch with me or DM me on Instagram. I'm also wander.sense on Instagram. Yeah. And any questions? Does anybody have any questions? Diana? You can just let me know in the chat if you wanted to ask a question or not. And if you don't, I will stop the recording. Cool. No questions right now. So, yeah, if you're feeling called, reach out to me. I'd love to chat and hear what kind of transformation that you're moving through right now that could use a little extra encouragement and support from dream figures who absolutely love you. Thank you.